This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening? Who are the newsmakers? What's in store for the future? The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey with the anchor for all seasons, Peter Katz, on White Plains Week, and Jim Benneroff is on assignment tonight. Peter, headlines, please.
You bet, John, and here are the headlines for the show we're recording June 1st. June 1st? How did that happen? Wow. The city passes a $193.9 million budget. Commissioners, mayor receive 2% raises. Citizens get free parking at street meters only. On holidays, you still have to pay in city lots and garages on 6 holidays. The new library plaza is bonded for $6.5 million. The mayor defends capital spending and reaffirms the city residential build-out, which is underway. The city is changing regulations on how long you can park and where you can park and so forth. So if you're going to park in White Plains, read the signs. We'll find out what's going to happen as it happens. Hamilton Green, the White Plains Mall development, will present its new design on Monday, this coming Monday, at the Common Council meeting. New York Assembly hearing on utility performance during the recent storms lasts 7.5 hours. It's not televised by the county, but you wouldn't expect the county to televise it. But it was supposed to be on the internet, and it did get there eventually, although if you looked to find it streaming on the internet live as it was happening, you may have had a hard time finding it. County Executive George Latimer sticks to a demand that the Public Service Commission seriously evaluate what's called mutual aid from out-of-state utility crews. During power storms, that's where they send for help from out of state, and sometimes it doesn't get here in a timely manner. David Buchwald on the People to be Heard program, seen on many of these stations and on the internet, says there's no clear plan ahead at this time for utility performance reform, but there are a ton of suggestions. MGM Resorts agrees to buy the Yonkers Empire City Casino, Yonkers Raceway, and the price, $850 million. It contemplates sports gambling, expanding casino, and maybe getting table games in the future. July 4th fireworks in White Plains blast off on not July 4th, July 3rd. It'll be at the White Plains High School. Trump tramples on in Washington. After another truck strikes the King Street Bridge in Rye, County Executive George Latimer demands a meeting to develop what he calls enhanced and more aggressive plans to deter trucks from entering the Hutchinson River Parkway. John?
Thank you, Peter. And let's go to the White Plains Week video newsreel March of Time for June 1st. And that, of course, is the bird's eye view with a packed crowd at the budget passage on Wednesday evening.
My goodness, you could hardly find a seat.
Yes, and what happened? They passed the budget. Next slide. Which is 193.9. It's up 2.6 from 189.4 million. It's 2% under the tax cap. The tax rate is up $5.99. That means, according to the mayor, 81 cents a month in new taxes for the average assessed home. That's $9.72. But if you're an average home, it's $33 a month. for the $650,000 median assessed home.
I don't know anyone who lives in an average home and
No,
pays
I mean,
these
that's
prices.
the median priced
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
And that's about a $400 tax increase.
Yeah.
So it all depends on
It all
your
it all
assessment.
adds up, and typically what happens, it works out to somewhere between $500 and $1,000 a year when you add in the city increase and the school system increase, and maybe this year there'll be a county increase to throw in just for good measure. And anyway, your taxes effectively are going to go up because remember we lose the full deductibility.
Yeah,
on
that's
our
yet to
federal
work
tax
itself
return.
out. Wait till we
So it's
do
gonna-
the 2019 tax
Yeah.
returns, right?
Yeah.
Now, who voted? Let's have look-see here. There were 5 yes votes. John Kirkpatrick, Nadine Hunt Robinson, the mayor, of course, John Martin and Justin Brash voted for it, and Milagros Lacuna and Dennis Crowley voted against it. They protested that they did not like the $6.5 million price tag on the library plaza, and also they were concerned about sales tax and revenues.
And so the commissioners are going to get some raises, right?
Yes, and they introduced free street meters only parking on 6 holidays.
Now, John and I have been grousing about this
Yes.
for years on this program. I mean, you go to attend the Memorial Day Parade in White Plains, you think it's a holiday because it is everywhere. You don't have to put money in the parking meter. You end up getting a parking ticket in White Plains.
Right, and the big thing that was not said during the council meeting was that you still have to pay in the garages and the parking lots on those 6 holidays.
At least not having to pay on holidays at street meters in White Plains is a step forward because the city really needs a more friendly, more inviting parking policy.
Well,
I mean,
this
you go
is the
to
step.
you go to Pleasantville. If you're going to go to Jacob Burns, for example, they've got municipal lots there. After 6 p.m., you don't have to put any money in the meters in all the lots. If it's a holiday, you don't have to put in money at all during the day up there. Look at how well the Jacob Burns Center does because Pleasantville has a pleasant parking policy. White
Right.
Plains can have a pleasant
Exactly.
parking policy too,
Now-
and it still
Yes.
could have parking and parking violations be a profit center for the city
Right.
at the same time. It's all a matter of balance.
Yeah,
you know?
the mayor responded to criticisms that of capital spending and also the lowering revenues, and he also allayed the fears of some of the councilmen who voted yes, who were concerned about these declining revenues, and he had this to say.
We have a great budget here. These are difficult times. One of the things that wasn't mentioned when talking about the issues that face the city, particularly when Councilman Crowley was speaking, we haven't had an increase in state aid in 10 years. The cities across the state have not. And that is not a gift to us. That is returning some of the revenue that the state brings in through the income tax, through the sales tax collections that we provide, and it has not been done. The school districts get an increase every year. In general, their increase exceeds the total unrestricted aid package to the municipalities. So throughout the state, municipalities are facing challenges because of that. I would also point out that in terms of sales tax revenue, anyone who opens a magazine, reads Twitter, goes online, recognizes that there is something called the internet. There is a company called Amazon. There are other companies, and they are selling to be delivered to your home the next day or in 2 days, and they are not, in many cases, required to collect sales tax. In efforts to cause them to do so, I have lobbied for that in Washington. And there's also been attempts in Albany to make headway with that, which were quashed by the Senate. So those are issues that have to be dealt with. And that is why this city has taken a proactive approach for years. This city was ahead of other communities on the concept of bringing housing back to the downtown. And Mayor Delfino, when he was here and he brought in the City Center project, that was the beginning of that. Now, at that time, if you were in the downtown of our city, you would have seen vacancies, a vacant Macy's here, and that entire block was vacant. When I was working in a law office in that area, there was a point where I couldn't get a sandwich without walking several blocks. It's a time that many people may not remember, but it happened. We were ahead of the curve. Now everyone is chasing to catch up. But the reason why it is so important when you look at the future of retail is that you need people living in your city to patronize the retail and support the retail that you have. And you need people living in your city to interest corporations in coming in. That is what they're seeking. It is not the old days where you would attract a Nissan and then you would go find workers. The companies that are coming in are looking for skilled workers to do what they need to do. That is what Dannon said when they came in. That's what all these companies say when they come in. We've brought in Jägermeister. We've brought in a lot of companies. Heineken USA is here. All of these companies are here, and they are generating revenue in our city. They are paying taxes in our city, the buildings that they're in, paying taxes in our city. And these are the types of things we have to do to build a solid foundation, not simply vote no on a budget. Debt is a separate issue. If you're in a community where they're borrowing money for operating, you're in a community that's in trouble. If you're in a corporation that's borrowing money for operating, that's a corporation that's headed for trouble. We borrow for major capital investments, which is what borrowing is for. It's the same as you don't want to, borrow money to buy groceries this month, but you will borrow money to buy a house. It's that type of concept. If you look at what we have done in this city, we have maintained the infrastructure of this city. I get around the state, former president of NICOM, I get around the state. There are plenty of cities, villages, towns that have not been able to stay up with their infrastructure and are facing a tremendous problem in the future. And it is also a deterrent to new investment in the city. We maintain our infrastructure, and as was pointed out by Councilman Kirkpatrick, we're making a major investment in our water supply. We need new tanks, so they have to be put in. Guess what? Someone put them in the 20s. Those people borrowed money to do that. We benefited from them for many years. Now we're borrowing money to replace them, and it will be paid off over time.
Now, over at the McCallion office building, we had the assembly come to town, and this was the scene on Tuesday. And Tuesday morning, George Latimer, the county executive, spoke, and so did Ben Boykin and hundreds of other people.
This was a hearing on Con Edison.
Yeah.
They've made a big deal now out of the response by Con Ed and NYSEG during the storm and why it took so long to get people's electricity back on afterwards. And basically, they're calling for the utilities to do a lot better than they have, and especially to take a look at what's called mutual aid, where the utilities, instead of maintaining staffs of crews, linemen, to go out and fix things, they call on utility companies in other states. They work together. They sort of pool their labor, but sometimes it takes days, maybe weeks even to
most times it takes days, even weeks. That's the whole point.
To get the mutual aid in where it's needed. Now, Assemblyman David Buchwald was interviewed by John on the program People to be Heard, which is seen on many of these same stations and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, at youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. And Buchwald talked about that.
This also goes to the utility companies. In the first instance, we're going to see to what extent voluntarily do they want to adopt some of our recommendations, and not that necessarily
What do you mean,
we know everything.
to what extent they want? Isn't
Well,
there a way we can make them do something?
There are, and that's part of what the Public Service Commission or those of us who are legislators can be involved in. But certainly to implement changes quickly, and that's sometimes very important because we don't know when the next storm is coming. One thing, the utility companies now are at the point where they have made their filings with the Public Service Commission, so they'll no longer be able to say, we'll have to wait for that filing to come out, which I think, was the first resort that sometimes was being used, and sometimes legitimately, sometimes more as an excuse. Now we're at the point where everyone's initial cards are on the table. There's no utility company executive who's going to be able to say, oh, I didn't know that was a problem. If it was a problem, it's in this report. And therefore, it's all the more an expectation that there be responses. And not that every response is going to be one that we or the public wants to hear or agrees with, but we certainly expect substantive response. I certainly believe the governor is committed to seeing changes.
He is committed.
Well, he was very forceful at the time in the immediate aftermath of these storms, and he's a constituent of mine. He in general seems to be a fellow who's a man of his word. That having been said, the exact form of what the solutions are going to be, that's something that we're only in the middle of now trying to work through. And I would welcome feedback from the utility companies, feedback from other electric contractors who have perspective on these things. But there are a bunch of ideas that have been put forward in the report, separate from our recommendations. If an individual town supervisor had an idea, it's laid out here. So it's now something that the Public Service Commission and the utility companies can react to, or that we can more broadly as United Westchester discuss.
Do you expect the Public Service Commission will let it go at a monster fine again, or are they actually going to perhaps examine this whole business of mutual aid?
I think it's got to be both a combination of substantive changes.
So there you have it.
So what's going to happen? We'll have to wait and see.
We don't know. We'll
wait
have
for the
to
next
wait and
storm,
see.
right?
Hey,
this is the start of hurricane season, right? So we'll see.
And
we'll
there's
see.
started something brand new over at Burke.
Actually, over on Mamaroneck Avenue this past Wednesday, the Burke Rehab Hospital had an event to mark the formal opening of a new care center, but this one is not for patients. It's for family members who take care of patients. And it was built with a donation from Kathleen and Brian Marçal. He underwent rehabilitation at Burke after undergoing bilateral knee surgery. At the Burke Rehabilitation Hospital in White Plains, leaders of the medical community gathered with government officials and other invited guests for the May 30th opening of the new Marçal Caregiver Center, a facility where family members can rest, recharge, use a kitchenette for snacks and beverages, or a computer workstation, or find a quiet place to meditate, or receive professional assistance from Burke counselors to help them meet the challenges of acting as caregivers at home for their loved ones undergoing treatment. The center is named for donors Kathleen and Brian Marçal. Marçal underwent rehabilitation at Burke after double knee surgery. Among the speakers, Westchester County Executive George Latimer.
It's so important for us to have centers like this that bring these professional disciplines together in a way that is approachable for all of us. I had the opportunity to tour here within the last month or so. I forget exactly when it was. These 5 months have kind of blurred together for those of you who are watching. But as we toured through it, I ran into an individual that I know fairly well, and he was here because his wife had a stroke. And you realize the emotion and the humanity that's involved in something like that. And to have at least around him the professionals, the equipment, the knowledge to help make that moment as easy as possible becomes very important.
The concept here and how this fits in is that we have now 5 centers in a 16-hospital system. Our goal is to have one at every center where the caregivers, which can be family, friends, it could be others that step up to the plate, get the care they need to be able to keep doing what is so difficult.
And we're the 5th caregiver center in the Montefiore Health System, but we are the first caregiver center solely devoted to rehabilitation in the United States. So that makes us very, very unique.
And
we're going to take a gamble.
That's something pretty unique happened.
Yeah.
There was a huge sale, a surprise announcement, first thing Tuesday morning this came out after the holiday weekend, and it is that MGM Resorts International on Tuesday announced that it is buying Empire City Casino and Yonkers Raceway, and get this, the price $850 million. Sellers, the Rooney family, who've owned the racetrack and casino for more than 46 years. MGM Resorts said it will pay an additional $50 million if Empire City is awarded a license for live gaming tables, just like they have in Las Vegas, prior to December 31st, 2022. The 97-acre facility sits just 15 miles from Times Square in Manhattan. It offers more than 5,200 slot and electronic table games. Multiple dining outlets, there's entertainment, live and simulcast horse racing. Empire City features the 6th largest gaming floor in the country, and it welcomes nearly 8 million visitors each year. That's a lot of money going through there each year at Empire City. And occasionally they have big jackpots, $1 million or $2 million on a slot machine.
Yes, they will probably also, Peter, get into sports gambling big time.
Well, yes, the Supreme Court recently ruled that any state can have sports gambling, so that that's something else again. Now, MGM Resorts wants to build a casino up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. and Connecticut.
We see an octopus here?
Yeah, the Native American tribes up in Connecticut are against that. And then you have the casino that opened up over in Sullivan County, the Monticello, you remember?
Yes.
We have that competition. So there's a lot of competition for what's in your wallet, I'll tell you.
Right, and of course, I want a piece of that Tappan Zee Bridge, don't you?
Well, you know,
I have the Macy's brick.
Governor Cuomo yesterday took his daughter Michaela for a boat ride out to Long Island's Shinnecock Reef to watch the first installation of recycled materials from the former Tappan Zee Bridge, along with other materials, as part of a program announced in April to create a dozen artificial reefs off Long Island. Now, this is the largest expansion of artificial reefs in state history. And there you see one of the barges. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we showed you some video of them taking down the center span of the bridge, putting it on a barge, and now they have cut it up, and they're dumping it into the water as part of this program to create artificial reefs. They're going to do this near Smithtown, Moriches, Fire Island, Hempstead, and Rockaway. And the plan calls for materials for the reef expansion to be strategically placed with the idea of improving New York's diverse marine life and boosting Long Island's recreational and sport fishing and diving industries. Now, also, while Governor Cuomo was while Cuomo was on Long Island, he addressed a luncheon meeting of some local politicos and selected community leaders and activists about another issue facing the Long Island shoreline, and that's a plan by the Trump administration to allow offshore drilling along all of the country's coastlines, and that would include up and down the Atlantic coast, including right off Long Island.
Why we would want to do more drilling for oil, why would we want to do it off our shoreline? First of all, everything is about moving away from fossil fuels. We have the most aggressive renewable standard in the United States of America. Why you want to do more? Why you would want to do it close to a shoreline where, God forbid, there's an accident, you could devastate the entire region. It means you learned nothing from the BP oil spill. All this rhetoric about we have it down to a science, we have it down to a science. Baloney. We saw what has happened. There is no science. A pipe breaks on the ocean floor. Nobody knows what to do for weeks. And we wind up poisoning an entire regional environment.
Now,
how about that?
And the Trump administration is pushing ahead with this. Now, even some of the red states along the coast are having conniptions about the idea of setting up this offshore oil drilling.
And think about the soft-shell crab population. I will miss that with a bad oil spill.
That's true. All it takes is one. You know, if you're having trouble getting a grasp on that, try to get a grasp on this. That Fox News,
yes, this
Fox
is cool.
News, right?
Yes.
Reported that President Trump is wrong when he claims the FBI spied on his campaign. This is Fox News saying Trump is wrong. Wow.
No. That's the shocker of the week.
Now that came
You were
this
waiting
week
for it,
from
weren't you?
Fox anchorman Shepard Smith, Fox commentator Judge Napolitano, and even one of Fox favorite contributors, Congressman Trey Gowdy. They all say there was no spying on the Trump campaign, and what the FBI did to gather evidence when they were tipped about the Trump campaign working with Russia was entirely proper. Now, Donald Trump this week gave out another presidential pardon. This time, he pardoned a right-wing pundit by the name of Dinesh D'Souza. He's a conservative commentator who had pleaded guilty to campaign finance fraud. And at the same time, there leaks started to appear that Trump is now thinking of also pardoning Martha Stewart and former Illinois Governor Rob Blagojevich,
That's why you haven't heard of him.
who was convicted of trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat.
Yeah, that
after
was such a
Obama
shocker at
was
the time.
elected, right?
I mean, yes, well, everything's for sale.
So this is now, both Blagojevich and Martha Stewart appeared with Trump on The Apprentice, right? When were doing
yes,
Celebrity
I'd forgotten
Apprentice.
that.
So the pundits in Washington seem to think that what Trump is doing is sending a message to people like Michael Cohen: don't flip on me, don't cooperate with the Mueller investigation, and I will take care of you with a pardon if you get into trouble.
Pardon as a weapon.
Yep.
I mean,
Attorney General Jeff Sessions rightly accused himself from supervising the Russia investigation because he worked on the Trump campaign. Well, it turns out now that Trump pressured Sessions to unrecuse himself, including giving him the cold shoulder and then verbally beating him up during a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. And now they say it may have been as many as 4 meetings at which Trump verbally beat up Jeff Sessions, saying, "You've got to be loyal to me and not the American people and Constitution and rule of law." Trump's now lawyer, Rudolph Giuliani, says Trump may be facing impeachment. So they're on a campaign to convince enough people to tell their congressmen not to impeach him. Have we seen yet another example of Trump using the American foreign policy to enrich himself and his family? Well, just after Trump announced tariffs against China, daughter Ivanka was awarded a dozen trademarks to protect the products she sells in China. And guess what? The Trump administration eased up on imposing Chinese tariffs.
does that sound like a quid pro quo to you?
I don't know. I think it used
Let's
to be
go
called,
ask Judge Gorsuch.
Used to be-
Gorsuch, I'm sorry.
It used to be called commercial bribery. The Trump White House said yesterday it will impose tariffs up to 25% on steel and aluminum from our allies, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, and the leaders of those
Not
countries say, no way, we will retaliate. We're not going to take it lying down. The Trump immigration policy is separating about 50 children from their mothers every day. These are people who,
this
under
is a
our laws,
horrible
have
story.
every right to come to the border and ask for asylum. An estimated 1,500 of the estimated 50,000 children seized by the government have been lost by the government. Former Republican House Speaker John Boehner says there is no more Republican Party. It now is the Trump Party. Trump has come to the defense of Roseanne Barr, who made a disgusting racial slur against former Obama Chief Advisor Valerie Jarrett. ABC canceled her TV show after that. Barr tried to make the excuse that she was under the influence of Ambien at the time, that she had made racist remarks, but Sandoz, the drug company that makes Ambien, says racism is not a side effect of using Ambien.
Right. Well, we had Memorial Day in White Plains last Monday, and I did not go because I was really sickened by Mr. Trump's saying that the dead veterans would approve of the shape America is today. He used the occasion to aggrandize his first 8 or 9 months, year and a half.
Yeah,
in office.
he also wished
Very bad taste.
he also wished the families of dead warriors a happy Memorial Day. Nothing happy about Memorial Day. It's a Memorial Day.
Yes, it is. A sad, sad situation. John Bailey, Peter Katz for Jim Beneroff. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.